Today we're going to tell you a tale of woe. Not about a person, but about the poor Binghamton-Johnson City Joint Sewage Treatment Plant. While you consider changing the channel, I would ask that you wait a minute. While sewage treatment isn't sexy, imagine what life would be like without it. But this sewage treatment plant has gone through hell. It was flooded in 2011. A large section of wall fell down, and then it was flooded again. And then there were lawsuits. Ultimately, a plan was created to fix the wall that the DEC approved in 2013. But after Binghamton Mayor Rich David was elected, he changed those plans and scrapped a planned project labor agreement along with it. Instead of rebuilding one section of the plant, David determined it would be better to rebuild the entire plant. Construction was supposed to be done in 2017, but it's nowhere near finished, and the DEC has started fining the plant $15,000 a month. While the mayor had initially proposed a $90 million redesign of the plant, that cost is now at $270 million. And with a 20-year bond repayment, it could cost as much as $400 million, according to some estimates. There are concerns that these costs will create a financial crisis at the county level, Broome County. And there's one more issue to discuss. The mayor is now interested in privatizing the management of the plan and in creating a public-private partnership. Joining me to discuss the situation from his perspective is newly elected Binghamton Councilman for the 2nd District, Dan Livingston. It's great to see you.
Thanks for having me.
So, first of all, why should my listeners who, live in Albany and Syracuse and Rochester and Buffalo care about this?
Well, Susan, a wastewater treatment facility is the first line of defense or possibly the biggest contributor to environmental damage that a city can produce. And for Binghamton, which has the largest wastewater treatment facility on the Susquehanna in New York State, and given that the Susquehanna drains into the Chesapeake Bay, actually the northernmost point in the Chesapeake Bay, so it really impacts the marine life in the Chesapeake. And a lot of people are concerned about...
Including Food and Water Watch.
Food and Water Watch, the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the list goes on.
So what is the role of the plant in the economy of the Southern Tier?
Well, sewage treatment plants actually figure into the capacity for a region to bring in new industry. If they can't process more effluent, then they can't put in a new factory or bring in a major employer.
So it's as simple as that. I mean, if there isn't a sewage treatment plant, the economy isn't going to grow.
Right. Well, and if the sewage treatment plant doesn't have excess capacity, then there's only so far it can go.
So would you say that this plant is critical to the economic success and environmental success of the Southern Tier?
Yes.
How old is the plant?
Well, the plant was first started getting built back in the early 1960s. There's an intermunicipal agreement between Binghamton and Johnson City that established the ownership of the plant.
Yeah, it's sort of a weird governance system, isn't it? I mean, is it the people of Binghamton and the people of Johnson City who own the plant?
Yes, and their representatives are often referred to as the owners, so the Binghamton and Johnson City legislatures and the mayors of both municipalities.
But this plant serves more than just these two municipalities.
That's right, yeah. It basically serves all the municipal entities in the valley.
Like what else? Vestal,
Dickinson, Kirkwood, Conklin.
SUNY Binghamton?
Absolutely, yeah. SUNY Binghamton, SUNY Broome, and Frito-Lay, which is one of our bigger employers in the county, and also all our hospitals. They rely pretty heavily on treating effluent there as well.
The people who work at the plant, who do they work for?
They work for the Joint Sewage Treatment Board. Now, the board is comprised of 3 appointees, each from both mayors of Binghamton and Johnson City. And they're all, well, not all of them, but all of the rank and file employees are CSEA union members.
Okay, so this is where it starts getting a little concerning for at least the workers. If there is this move by the mayor to privatize the management of the plant, would that mean that CSE workers who work there would lose their jobs?
Well, so they would lose their jobs by definition because they're employed by the board, and a new contractor would want to be the employer of record. So they would all have to be let go and then reapply for their jobs.
All right, I'm getting ahead of myself. So
That's
first
all
of
right.
all, let's talk about what's happened to this plant over the past 5 or 10 years. If it was a person, I would say that it might need to go to therapy. But
Yes.
bad things have happened here. What happened?
So back in 2006, while the plant was undergoing some renovations, there was I believe that was a 500-year flood that came and knocked out the plant. And as the plant rebuilt its capacity over the ensuing years, there was a wall collapse of one of the. It's a bit technical, but there was basically an engineering problem with one of the processes, and the concrete wall of one of these tanks just peeled away like the peel of a ripe banana. And then a few months later, there was another flood, this time a 1,000-year flood, and knocked out the plant again. And so for most people in the community, the plant has been perpetually under construction, but it really has been dealing with these natural disasters.
Is it in a flood zone?
Yes. I mean, sewage treatment plants, need to be
In flood zones.
Well, they need to be they need to be by the water, and they need to be below where the effluent is coming from. Otherwise, you have to pump everything in, which can be hugely problematic if the pumps break down. I don't even know if it's feasible to pump all your sewage uphill.
Okay, so this is a matter of gravity and physics.
Yeah.
All right, so construction, after the wall collapsed, there was a plan under Mayor Matt Ryan to reconstruct the wall. It was a limited rebuild, but then a new mayor was elected, Mayor Rich David. Why did the mayor change the goal, and what was his new goal?
Well, actually, the plan under the Ryan administration was to bring the plant back up to capacity. It was a $90 million plan. And then Rich David came in and set that plan aside and put a new $90 million plan in place that has ballooned out to, as you said, around $270 million now.
How has he changed the plan? Why did it go? Why did it go from a $90 million to a $270 million plan?
I would characterize it as, instead of going from they basically went from, we're going to rebuild the plant to now we're going to upgrade the plant.
Okay. And the reason he wanted to upgrade the plant is because it needed to be updated.
It's
pretty old.
I mean, it's old, but, whether the plant needs upgrades or not is one question, but whether the community can afford to upgrade the facility is another question altogether.
So the goal was rebuilding and upgrading. Since then, there was a plan to do that by 2017. That didn't happen. Why? What went wrong?
That's anybody's guess at this point. It seems that the contract manager for the project, Jacobs Engineering, they've struggled to coordinate everything that's going on the at the construction site. It's a 10-acre footprint with at least 20 acres of equipment. So they're building everything vertically and into the ground, and it takes a lot of coordination to be able to build things out, bring them online, and use them while more construction is still taking place.
All right. So although this has happened before in New York State, I mean, we have had successful and on-time building in other locations in New York. So it's not like it's reinventing the wheel, right?
Right. Well, I mean, in fact, there are other problems with this facility that we could conceivably solve by looking to other communities, looking at what they've done.
Let's get back to that.
Sure.
In a minute. I have heard in my research that the people at Jacobs Engineering have said one reason why there's been delays is that this is a Wick's Law state. Have you heard that?
Yeah, well, I've also heard that the project manager, Jerry Nystrom, the person who works for Jacobs, who's responsible for this, he's never run a project under New York State Wick's Law. So I think that a law is a problem if you have no idea it exists or if you don't know how to operate within its boundaries.
Is there also a problem with the David administration's relationship with the AFL-CIO or any of the unions?
Well, I think that when he shot down the project labor agreement, when he vetoed this PLA, that soured the milk, I guess.
All right. When you say it soured the milk, so are you saying that there aren't enough people willing to work on the plant?
Well, I mean, without a project labor agreement, there's only so much you can do with a union workforce, with union contractors. They're either willing to work there or they're not. And it seems that largely they haven't been willing to go there because the labor support isn't there that they need.
Not to mention the fact that there are people who work there now who could lose their jobs under this possible privatization plan.
Well, yeah, and that's obviously another problem altogether.
Okay, so there's a little bit of goodwill that's lacking here. Yeah,
well, I mean, I think that part of how the goodwill was lost in this most recent push for privatization is that this RFP drafting the request for proposals wasn't done the way that RFPs are usually drafted in the city of Binghamton, where the local experts from the department are part of drafting the RFP. They basically help move the process along from start to finish. And the plant staff, the plant management that are there now were intentionally kept out of the loop.
All right, so I want to talk about transparency for a second. This seems to underlie a lot of the unhappiness about what's going on with the plant. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, well, it's
a lack of transparency.
Yes, there's a lack of transparency, but it's not just unhappiness, it's confusion. Because when you don't have access to accurate and timely information, the public is, prone to speculate, and the press can
and they'll
only
fill
do
in
so
their
much.
own blanks,
That's
basically.
Exactly right. Yeah.
And just so my listeners know, we have extended an invitation to the mayor, and anytime he wants to come on and discuss this, he is more than welcome to. But transparency, the lack of transparency, I think, became very apparent when a study of this construction sort of turned into an 880-page RFP, request for proposals. Can you explain how that happened?
Yeah, so back in October of 2018, there was a vote that was taking place for a contract to study the management structure of the plant, or at least that's what the city council was told. I've looked back to try and access the audio recording of that meeting, but it seems it's the only audio recording from 2018 that is missing. So I can't confirm exactly what
Were you there?
I wasn't there. I just took office in January, but I've been trying to track down what happened and why the city council was under the impression that they were voting for a study, because what they got was an oral presentation and no written study.
So I thought you said it was an 880-page RFP.
Yeah, well, you said that, but
I said that, yes.
But
it was. Though,
it
yes.
absolutely was. But it moved from oral presentation of a study to an RFP so quickly that it seemed apparent that that was the intent all along, was really just a contract to draft an RFP. Because if there was a study, then the plant staff may have had an opportunity to bid this contract as well. If there was a feasibility study done where they said that privatization was the way forward, then they should have shown us the data so that we could, confirm that in fact public ownership was not desirable, which is their claim.
What we're doing is talking about a sewage treatment plant. And I know it's not very exciting, but this is, I think, an illustration of what's happening in upstate New York with a lot of our aging infrastructure. The Binghamton Johnson City Joint Sewage Treatment Plant is under construction, and there have been a lot of delays. And we're speaking with a critic, Binghamton Councilman for the 2nd District, Dan Livingston. We'll be right back.
Support for the Capitol Press Room is provided by Destiny USA. Shopping, dining, and entertainment all in one location. For more information, go to www.destinyusa.com.
Again, we're speaking with Binghamton Councilman Dan Livingston. So the goal here of this $270 million contract was to rebuild and upgrade the sewage treatment plant. Some people were upset that what they thought was a study turned into a request for proposals. Who specifically is unhappy here?
The public is unhappy because they don't really seem to have a say in this process. It's moving very quickly.
Although there will be a vote later, but we'll talk about that.
Correct. Obviously the plant staff and management are upset. They feel like they're being railroaded. And also the municipal leadership of the other municipalities that use this facility are pretty upset because they had to find out that this privatization plan was moving forward through the press. They weren't consulted, they weren't informed.
So there was no buy-in.
There was no buy-in from these other municipal entities.
There was no vote on whether to privatize?
No, the only vote that took place was this contract vote back in October of last year.
The DEC does not look kindly on these delays. What have they said or threatened?
So you mentioned at the start of the program that they're currently fining us $15,000 per month. We are currently in violation of 2 dates on our timeline, and each of those violations could hit us with a fine from the DEC of $1,000 to $37,000 per violation per day.
All right, so this is leaking money at this point.
That's right.
Who bid on the RFP, and what exactly are they bidding on?
So there are 3 companies that submitted bids. There's Veolia, they're from France. There's Jacobs Engineering, they're our project manager on site currently, and there's Utility Partners. And what they're bidding on is what's called an operations and management contract. So they're bidding to run and maintain this facility.
So they would be privatizing the management of the facility.
Correct.
And they're bidding on who gets to do the management.
That's right.
They can't actually buy the facility because it's owned by Binghamton and Johnson City.
Correct. I mean, anything could be sold, I suppose, but that's not what's on the table right now.
All right. Do you know who won the bid?
No, the bids were supposed to be a contract coming out of the bid selection committee that's been meeting behind closed doors for a couple of months now. It was supposed to come out August 16th. They pushed the date to today, so there could be a contract as soon as today.
So, and you don't know who won. Do you find it, is it a conflict of interest that Jacobs Engineering, who is currently the project manager on this project, also bid?
I happen to believe that there is. My colleagues and our city's attorney have said that there is not. I'm also concerned that one of the contractors who drafted the RFP and who is sitting on the bid selection committee also worked for a subsidiary of one of the bidders.
Which one?
Jacobs Engineering.
We'll be right back.
Support for the Capitol Press Room is provided by New York State United Teachers, a union of professionals in education, human services, and healthcare.
So it seems like Jacobs Engineering keeps popping up.
Yeah.
So we'll be extending an invitation to them as well to appear on the program. But they are currently the project manager. They bid on the RFP. And somebody who wrote the RFP used to work for a Jacobs Engineering subsidiary.
Yep,
and
CH2M Hill is the name of the subsidiary.
CH2M Hill, and you feel that this is problematic.
Absolutely.
Are you the only one?
I'm not the only one, but I'm in a super minority as a Democrat on the Binghamton City Council. Not that everything breaks on partisan lines, but I've found a lot of reluctance among my colleagues to push back against this in a really substantive way.
All right. So the contract is supposed to emerge from the bid selection committee today. At this point, we're not sure who that is, but supposedly we'll find out. So what's next, Dan Livingston? There are 2 hurdles to be cleared, a couple of votes.
Yeah, so in about a month from when the contract comes out of the bid selection committee, there's going to be a vote on that where a majority of both the Binghamton City Council and the Johnson City Board of Trustees needs to pass it, and then there will be an intermunicipal agreement vote that'll have to pass with a supermajority on both bodies.
So at this point, you are on the Binghamton Council. Are you going to vote yes or no?
I'm voting no.
Who's on the intermunicipal? Who will vote on the intermunicipal agreement? The same 2 boards?
Yes.
Will you vote no?
Yes.
Have you counted votes? I mean, can you tell us at this point what you think the outcome of the vote will be?
You know, I hear different things in private when I'm talking with my colleagues than they are willing to say in public. So I'm not really sure how it's all going to shake out. You know, with a contract for operations management that could be worth upwards of $100 million over a 10-year timeline, that's a lot at stake. And, you know, I think that a lot of my colleagues are really reluctant to voice their opinions too soon.
Why would you vote on privatizing the management of the plant when the construction isn't finished yet?
That's beyond me. You know, the mayor has been a proponent of this plan from the beginning, and he says that our current plant staff are not up to the task of managing this new facility without providing any evidence to justify that position.
I should mention that in my research, a former superintendent wrote an op-ed or a column in the Binghamton Press and Sun Bulletin saying exactly that the people who run the plant are, in fact, up to speed and know what they're doing.
Yeah, and it's extremely problematic to pursue these 2 things simultaneously because we need to have our eye on the prize of finishing this plant and getting out from under the hammer of the DEC, and we have a responsibility to the ratepayers and also to the environment everywhere from, you know, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania down into the Chesapeake Bay. You know, they're relying on us to get this right. And right now we have 7 unfilled staff positions at the facility, and who's going to take a job that could evaporate in the next 3 months? So at a critical time when we need full staffing and we need everybody trained and up to speed on the new processes, we can't find new people to fill these positions.
I have another question for you. Why is the administration opting for private management rather than a public authority, which I think is what they did up in Onondaga County and
Monroe
in Monroe
County.
County?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a good question. You should ask the mayor that question. He's been really reluctant to talk about anything other than this plan for privatization.
Although, okay, I do have to say that his folks got back to me pretty quickly yesterday about him being ready to speak to us. Although
fantastic,
we don't have that nailed down yet. So, what about the other municipalities, Dan Livingston, that don't have a vote on this? How do they feel about privatizing the governance, or rather privatizing the management of a plant that is not yet completed in its construction? Communities like Vestal and SUNY Binghamton.
Yeah, you know, I think that they're first and foremost really concerned that this process is moving forward so fast and behind closed doors that they aren't able to keep up with what's actually happening. I know that there's, you know, been some concern expressed by folks at Frito-Lay to the town of Kirkwood, you know, about what's going to happen with these water sewer rates. The county executive recently issued a letter to the mayor and asked him to project the sewer rate increases for the next 3 years for budgetary purposes, and the mayor has yet to provide an adequate response to that request.
I don't think there's any question that sewer rates are going to go up, but they were going to go up anyway.
Right, but if the public knew that their sewer rates were going to go up, they might decide not to go on that vacation next year. You know, they might budget accordingly. Same with business owners. They may decide not to do a capital investment in their business so that they can pay their bills.
So how much will rates go up? We don't know?
We don't know. We could know, but it would be contingent on either the city council or the mayor directing the city's comptroller to produce such a projection.
What else do you want my listeners to know about this project?
You know, I want your listeners to know that that this project is really important to the southern tier. It's really important to the city of Binghamton. And if you care about the environment, if you care about workers' rights, if you care about, what goes on, outside of your bubble, this is probably the biggest issue that's coming down the pike for the city of Binghamton, for Broome County, that I'm going to see in the next 10 years. That'll be my guess.
The reason why I wanted to talk about this is we've seen what happens with water infrastructure all over the East Coast. What happened in Pittsburgh, what is happening in Newark, New Jersey. This isn't quite the same thing, but it's certainly not apples and oranges. All of our infrastructure is aging, and pretty soon we're going to need to invest in it.
What happened in Pittsburgh and also in Flint, Michigan, Veolia was involved in both of those situations, and they're one of the bidders on this contract.
They were in charge. They were a part of the situation of what happened with the water, or part of it fixing it.
No, they were involved in creating the problem in both of those situations, Pittsburgh and in Flint, Michigan.
Okay, so are you concerned about that? I mean, that sounds like it might raise some red flags.
Yeah, I mean, in my research on Jacobs and Veolia, they have, public corruption issues, they have labor violations, safety violations, environmental violations, stretching back years and years.
So what's your next step? We have about a minute, Dan Livingston.
My next step is to really continue to communicate with the public and impress upon them that this is the time for them to get involved. If they're concerned about this, they need to contact their elected representatives and express their concern. They need to contact the mayors of both municipalities and express their concerns. Because as far as I can tell, it's largely opposition coming from the public to this. About 90% of the public is opposed to this.
That is the tale of the Binghamton-Johnson City Joint Sewage Treatment Plant, at least from the perspective of Binghamton City Councilor Dan Livingston. And we have reached out again to Mayor Rich David. I'm hoping that he'll take me up on my offer for an interview. I want to thank Dan Livingston for his time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to thank you for joining us. Our producer has been Tim Williams.
Howdy.
Our engineer, Dave White. I'm Susan Arbetter. You've been listening to the Capitol Press Room.
Join us again for Capitol Press Room, a production of WCNY Connected, Syracuse.